Hi, Annalisa Six here with your 2023 February horoscope for the sun and rising sign of Cancer. Cancer. Okay, so we're going to jump right in and talk about your horoscope for the month of February. And there's quite a bit going on for you in terms of how you've been processing your emotions under the surface with others. I think in the last month, I talked about your relationship to anger and how you're working through your thought process and your internal process with anger. It's really common when we have Mars passing through this specific area of our chart. It's the area that rules the subconscious, our dreams, our imagination, that we're battling with internal anger or internal rage, and we're also having to navigate, how do I find healthy ways to let this anger or this emotion out? Cancer is such a sensitive sign and so empathic that it does have a tendency to have a hard time expressing itself in that way constructively. Not necessarily at all. I know plenty of Cancer people that seem to be great at expressing their anger, but not always in a constructive way. And so those are things that have been themes for you during the Mars retrograde cycle. And now that Mars is direct, in February, all the planets are direct. We don't have any retrogrades. And so Mars is direct in this area, which means that hopefully you're making some progress around the way that you express yourself. And because it's not in an area of expression, of self-expression, it's more of how you're internally working through it. If you have a therapist and you've been working around healing your relationship to anger and expressing your feelings, that's really good work for you. It's really common for that stuff to come up in our dreams. So if you've been having dreams where you're screaming or even violent dreams, that can also be an internalized way that anger shows up when it needs healthy expression. So those are some themes for you. Mars and Gemini in this area can also lend itself to having more anxiety and kind of feeling like you're working through, how to manage that more effectively. And so that's definitely a theme for you throughout the whole month of February, because Mars is not out of Gemini yet. But when Mars leaves Gemini, which is going to be in March, it enters your sign of Cancer. And so once Mars is in Cancer, that stuff is probably going to start coming out more if it isn't already. And so it is good to kind of be in that process of working through, how do I want to constructively address the things that I have going on with myself and others. Where this is kind of also supported and emphasized for the month of February for you is Mercury, which is no longer retrograde, had been kind of influencing the area of your chart that has to do with relationships. And so learning how to communicate like in a more straightforward, practical, pragmatic, and less emotional way in your relationships was a big theme over the last month. And we enter February with still some of that energy. Mercury is going to be in Capricorn until the 11th, and then it enters Aquarius on that day. And when Mercury enters Aquarius, there's almost like an extension of the theme of relationships, but whatever you worked through over the last month, hopefully you're evolving and making some breakthroughs in how you communicate those things. And then the themes around what you're talking about changes. So you're talking more now in the month of February, the theme for communication and your thought process, it has more to do with shared resources and financial institutions. And so loans, financing a home, banks, your relationship to money that you inherit, things like that. Also, your relationship to your sexuality is going to come up a bit. And so it's not totally uncommon for Mercury and Aquarius in this area for a Cancer rising person to be questioning their sexuality or whether or not they're getting their needs met sexually, or wanting to even explore different things sexually. So that could be a theme more for a Cancer rising individual. Cancer sun, this applies to you as well, but it might be more relevant for the rising. Mercury will be in Aquarius for the rest of February. And so those are just some of the themes that come up. And if you're married or if you're in a partnership where you share resources like money, food, the bills, that kind of stuff, you might be refiguring out or renegotiating how those things get broken down because of where it's hitting in the horoscope chart. And so those are some themes as well. Venus is going to be in Pisces for the first half of February, and then she enters Aries on the 20th. And so where that's affecting the Cancer individual is in the area that has everything to do with our belief systems. And then using a Placidus house system, I always like in my head think Placidus and whole signs. I always have the two split. So I'm always kind of speaking to both. And so we have a teeter-totter of the house that represents our belief systems and kind of the way that we belief systems around a lot of things, like our cultural views, our world views, our spiritual and religious beliefs. Like that's something that we might feel really connected to, or like we want to hunker in and sink into in a yummy way. And I don't use that word very often, but that's what came to mind because it's Venus, yummy, you know, something that feels good. And then that might segue more into how we're expressing and internalizing our work that we're doing in the world. Venus is going to be blessing the Cancer individual in February when it comes to work and career. And so a lot of times when people have Venus passing over the midheaven at the top of the chart, of course, this is for a horoscope, not necessarily each individual sun sign person. This is more accurate for a rising. But when we have that happening, we're more prone to get promotions or financial rewards through our efforts, through the work that we're doing. And so you might get a raise, you might have some financial things come through in the work sector that you've been waiting for that are really positive. And then by the end of February, with Venus moving into Aries, this is also really good for taking more of a leadership role with your community or at work or even in your social circles. Venus squares Cancer. So I'm sorry, not Venus, Aries squares Cancer. So that can also be a little bit tense sometimes. You're more reactive. You could take things more personally, but Venus is still really positive and really good for working on self-care and acts of self-love when it's in Aries. And so we're going to get a lot of that energy at the end of the month, especially with Jupiter being in Aries. And so that's going to be really positive as well for your social life and the way that you're connecting to people that you work with. And so again, your work is very elevated in a positive way at this time. This is a really auspicious time. So if you're thinking of getting a new job, applying for a promotion, asking for a raise, all that kind of stuff, it's supported for a Cancer individual right now for sure. Let's get into the full and new moon. So we have a full moon on February 5th at 16 degrees Leo. I feel like I've memorized when it is, but I keep double checking to make sure the right thing's coming out of my mouth. And so this is a really powerful time for you to acknowledge kind of where your self-worth is coming from and whether or not you feel like you're really doing enough acts of self-care in terms of how you manage. Okay, this isn't coming out exactly the way that I'm thinking about it in my brain, so let me backtrack. The area of the chart where this is hitting for the Cancer individual has to do with self-worth. And it's a good time when a full moon is happening to set intentions towards what we want to call in whatever area of the chart that it's hitting in. And so this is a really good time if you are thinking about your finances and feeling like you're not making what you're worth. This full moon is a perfect time to set intentions around charging what you're worth to your employer, asking for what you're worth, and also having those expectations even in your relationships. You know, if we're surrounded by people that we don't feel like really value us, that can have a big impact on the way we see ourselves, our you know, our sense of self in every way. And so the full moon is actually a time where you're going to be reflecting on that. And if you want more money and you want more stability and you want to level up, this is the time to do it. You're supported. And this full moon that's coming up on the 5th is a great time to do some magic and manifestation work around that. At the end of the month, we're going to enter Pisces season on the 19th. And again, this is going to kind of get you more in touch with your spirituality, your belief systems, kind of how you're feeling. And then also, you know, kind of throughout Pisces season, that'll kind of segue into your work life. And the day after the 19th, on the 20th, we have our new moon at 1 degree Pisces. And so that's going to be a really powerful time for you to set intentions around how you connect to yourself on a deeper level, again, around belief systems. And the big thing for me when these things come up that I say over and over and over again is, are you living in alignment with that belief system or that value system. And if you're not, you're definitely going to feel inspired and motivated to think outside the box on the changes that you need to make in your life to make sure that that happens. We have a lot of other transits happening for the month that are more specific to an individual chart that I went over in the February synopsis. So I recommend checking that one out if you want a little bit more of a glance at that. But we do have a lot of energy that really supports you in elevating and leveling up when it comes to your career and your finances, for sure. There's one other thing that I think I didn't talk about. No, I did. I talked about it at the beginning, Mercury and Aquarius. So we're good there. So that Cancer is a little breakdown of your horoscope for the month of February. I hope that you get that raise or that new job or whatever financial abundance or material stability, whether it's buying a house. I mean, you've got some buy some property energy in this chart for sure. So even if it's like taking out a loan so that you can open a business or do something that you want to do, like all of that is so supported this month. So I'm really hoping that that's true for you, and good luck. And I will see you guys next month.